Chirpy with the Chirpy YouTube channel. It's been a while since I have posted a new video, and I have very good reasons for this. I've had a lot of health challenges that I have been working with over the last, well, long time, but they kind of reared up during December, and then I got the flu right after Christmas, so hooray! It was very exciting. I'm glad to be moving back in the right direction health-wise, and I'm glad to be here with you again, chatting on YouTube. I did want to mention, just kind of as an aside, that I have fought with a lot of health conditions and diagnoses that have really affected my life in some very deep and upsetting ways, and I'm pretty sure that there are some of you out there who have had similar experiences. So I was wondering if you're interested in hearing more about my journey and about how I have learned to live, no, I haven't finished this process, how I am learning to live with significant limitations and how I've chosen to focus on the things that I have focused on, including this channel, including the curriculum that I write and distribute. If you'd like to hear more about that, leave me a comment down below in the comments, or just give this video a thumbs up, and I will interpret that to mean that perhaps I should do a video series on health issues and chronic conditions that affect us and how I'm learning to manage mine. In this video, I would like to talk about disruptive behavior. I know it's one of everyone's favorite topics, although not one of our favorite things to experience. Disruptive behavior is the #1 thing that people are concerned about because it can be dangerous and because we just don't understand where it's coming from most of the time. Step 1 in working with kids who are disruptive is to keep everyone else safe. Your #1 important task in working with anything, in anyone, is keeping people safe, not making things worse. If you're a doctor, don't cause harm. If you are a teacher, keep your students safe. Don't let them hurt each other. Don't let anyone else hurt them. Don't hurt them yourself. Keep students safe. So if you have a child in your classroom who is damaging other children, or in fact your own property, or you, something needs to be done about that. If you are in a volunteer position or you have volunteers who are working with you or under you, you need to talk to your leader about protecting your team and the other students in your classroom. It is not safe to have an aggressive child who is hurting other kids. It's not fair to the other kids. It's not fair to volunteers or staff people. It's not okay. It's better, although it sounds horrible, to not have that child in your program than to endanger everyone else who's in your program. If you have more questions about how maybe to systematize this, how to have a system, a protocol for this, I have a document that I have created working with churches on how to manage kids with special needs called the Continuum of Care. I will probably do a whole separate video about that, but I will also send you that document if it would be helpful to you in an email. So just leave me a comment down below that you would like that document and I will send it to you. Keeping in mind that we need to keep everyone safe, there should be a plan that you have, a protocol that you've put in place. If a child becomes out of control and starts hurting other kids, what do you do? The best strategy is typically to take the other kids to a different place rather than to take the out of control one to a different place, because how many people have to touch and be endangered by an out of control student to move him, versus if you can just have the kids grab onto their rope and you move them out into the playground for a while, or you move them into the lobby if need be, while this child calms down a little bit. I have a video about what to do in case of red alert, and I will put a little tab up here about that, so please feel free to check that out if you are in situations, in fact everyone should probably view it, but especially if you're in situations where children reach red alert and become aggressive or go into meltdown mode. Now that we have realized we need to keep everyone safe at all times as much as possible, we'll move on to step 2. And step 2 is to figure out what helps the child to stay calm. In this video, I think I'm just going to go for classrooms. If you are a parent watching this, interpret it the way that you need to make it the most helpful for you. I have an example from my classroom that I've been thinking about over the last few weeks, a student I've been working with over the last few weeks, and we have found that this process has been really helpful for us as we try to manage his disruptive behaviors. The first thing that we needed to do with him was to figure out some things that helped him to stay calm. This is very difficult for many of us as we deal with certain students because it seems like the student is always dysregulated, is always just unhappy and angry and would love to hit us or bite us or pull our hair. And in fact, in my classroom, we had, I think, 3 scratching injuries from this student before we sort of figured him out a little bit more. With this particular child, there are a lot of sensory issues going on. He is very sensitive to sound, and our classroom's very noisy. He's very sensitive to people being too close, and our classroom is far too full. I wish I could change that, but right now I can't. He is very sensitive to people touching him, and sometimes in our class, we sometimes prompt by putting our hand on a child's shoulder or helping a child by sort of gently pushing on his back or that kind of thing, and those things could set this student off. We needed to learn those quirks and those unique characteristics of this student. And that's your job for the first little while, is to assess, to observe, to get as much inside this child's world as you can and figure out which things set him off. Also, I'm going to be using the pronouns he and him because the student that I'm explaining to you, even though you won't hear his name or see his face, is a boy. This can very well just as easily be a girl. You're going to need to figure out this child and get inside his head as much as you can. So we observed for a few weeks. We learned the things that set him off. A little more difficult for us to figure out was which things helped him feel better. If he was a little dysregulated, what could bring him back down to baseline? Eventually, we discovered a few things that sometimes work. I should probably explain at this point that this student is very unengaged, extremely unengaged, would prefer to have very little to do with any other human beings. He does like his mom and dad, but not if they're pushing him to interact with them. He also doesn't appreciate needing to request anything, needing to have other people anywhere near him. He is one of those kids who would prefer to do his thing over in the corner with a blanket over his head much of the time. Much of the behavior is sensory seeking, and a lot of his other behaviors are avoiding behaviors, trying to avoid other people. He is so far nonverbal and does not have a successful way to communicate. We are, of course, since I'm a speech pathologist, that's my big passion. Kids have to have a good way to communicate. We are working with him on the picture exchange communication system, the communication books. I'll put a little tab up here for more information if you would like it about that and about how to use communication books with kids who are developing communication skills. So we are working on that with him, but that is a long process, especially for a child who is at his level, with his level of preference to avoid interaction when possible. Having said that, we have discovered that there are some sensory experiences that he likes and that help him feel better. One of them is the fan on his face. One of them is a set of Mickey Mouse books that I have. Another thing is putting a blanket over his head and spinning around and around. We have a very full classroom, so we have to be very cautious that he doesn't crash into things or other children. And he also likes vibration, especially on his mouth. And so we have some little vibrating chew toys, an alligator and a crocodile, although they're very poorly made. If someone could make some better versions of this, one arrived not functional, and the other one that arrived broke when he dropped it on the floor one time, and without any harsh treatment, I mean, these are children with disabilities and delays, so they don't treat toys like they are priceless heirlooms. At the same time, it wasn't, you know, bashing it against a stone or anything like that. It was fairly mild treatment from my perspective. So if someone could make better versions of these and let me know, I would appreciate that. I still will put links to the ones that I bought down below because they are the only ones of their kind as far as I can discover. Anyway, he liked those to bite on those, and he liked when we would put a vibrating thing on his back. Those are the things we found that help him feel better. None of them works all the time. It's very surprising which things will not work on any particular day and which things will. We also are learning how to read him, so if he's doing this with his fingers, somebody is going to get scratched or pinched. But he is also unpredictable, and so if we have just had our hands on him for any reason whatsoever, we all have to stand back and wait, because sometimes it builds up inside him and then he pounces. And so we stand off and we wait, and then when we can tell that he's moved on, then we can move back in a little bit closer. We have to keep all these things in mind when working with a student who is disruptive, especially one who's aggressive. After we figure out what keeps the child calm, our third step is going to be provide as much of that as the child needs to stay calm. That might be every 2 minutes the child needs to get up and jump on the trampoline. It might be the child needs to hang on to a particular item for the entire time that he's with you, or it might mean that he needs to spin in the corner for 30 minutes out of the 90 minutes that you have with him. Whatever it is that the child needs to stay calm, that's what we need to provide initially, because it keeps the child safe and it keeps other people in the classroom safe too. And keeping people safe is our #1 priority. Number 4, we're going to introduce activities that are not some of those preferred activities. We're going to provide opportunities to be involved in activities that we think may serve the same purpose as some of the activities the student really likes. So for example, I know my student really likes things that vibrate. I may choose to get a vibrating pillow and put it on a chair and see if he will sit in a chair. So far, chairs are not his thing. But I would love it if he graduated to the point where he is willing to sit in a chair, so we can incorporate him more into our group times. Now that we know how sort of to keep this child calm most of the time, we want to play with the ratio of how many calming things we do versus how many non-calming things we do. So perhaps when a student is with you for the first time, let's say that you are a church and you have an hour and a half with your students in your classroom. And the first few times that you see this disruptive student, he is really challenging to manage, and maybe he just wants to jump on the trampoline all the time that he's there, and if you try to direct him towards anything else, he tries to bite you and pull your hair. Okay, we know staying on the trampoline helps him stay calm. We're just going to let him do that for a little while at the same time interacting with him, while at the same time encouraging him to watch the process of the rest of the class and to participate even if from afar. With the student that I've been working on helping recently, he is much more likely to participate in activities away from the rest of the class. So we often have him doing his art activities, his motor activities, while sitting on the trampoline. There's no problem with that. That is called graduated participation. It means that he's participating just at a bit of a different level. He's dipping his toe into the activity rather than jumping all the way in. And that is improvement. So that's what we want to play with. At first, maybe he's on the trampoline the whole 90 minutes, and then perhaps 1 week, he's having a great week, and you're able to get him to shift and step off the trampoline and do a little bit of dancing and wiggling during your music and movement time. That's great improvement. So with my kid, I want to decrease the amount of time that he's spinning with a blanket on his head. We want to find some ways to make those behaviors more engaging if we possibly can. and I have a video about working on engagement, a whole playlist of videos working on engagement, because that's kind of one of my favorite topics. So check those out if you're interested. And move away from those less engaging, more sensory behaviors as we are able. The goal is to keep the child calm while at the same time pushing him only as much as he can take. We have to be cautious. When you see the kid starting to ramp up, we back off. Push a little bit more. If he's ramping up, we back off. That is the game we play to help the child become a little bit more interactive and a little bit more participatory in the flow of our classroom. You can tell if a child is ramping up by increased tension in the body, when the muscles get tight and tense, increased tension in the jawline. Vocal volume typically goes up and vocal frequency typically goes up. We often hear squealing. We might hear teeth grinding, especially in kids with Down syndrome. We might hear humming and rocking and this is usually a way to block out the world when it's just a little too overwhelming. We might see hitting of self or trying to hide under the table or closing the eyes, and a lot of rocking. That happens a lot when kids are overwhelmed. Even I think I do that when I'm overwhelmed. These are some ideas that the ramping up might be occurring, and we might need to back off with pushing for a little while. It's usually a very slow process, and we want to make sure that we're not pushing the child so hard that he becomes dysregulated. Dysregulated is not a state in which anyone can learn. It's not a state in which anyone can choose to interact in a healthy and happy way. It means you're out of control. And we want to provide as much support and as much love and gentleness and compassion as we can to our students and our children, so that they can stay regulated as much of the time as possible. When we show love and compassion and enable kids to stay regulated, they learn to trust us. They know that we are not going to purposefully push them so hard that they can't stay calm. Nobody wants to be out of control. That's why kids do the behaviors they do. We all want to stay calm, and kids usually know the things that are going to help them stay calm. A lot of times we don't let them do those things because they're weird, because we want them to be doing something else, because we want to control and manipulate the kids to behave like other kids. And that is why our job is so challenging, but also so rewarding. When we gain the trust of a child who has a difficult time regulating himself, it means a lot. It means a lot to that kid, and it means a lot to their family, and it means a lot to me to know that I've earned a student's trust. I hope this video was helpful for you. I know I can't solve all of your students' behavior challenges in one little video, but hopefully in each video that you see, you pick out something that is meaningful to you, something that really helps you and inspires you and motivates you to make your work better, to make your students' lives better, to make your classroom more welcoming, more hopeful, more motivating for the students too. I hope your level of compassion rises as you work with these kids instead of the other way around, which is so common in our field and with kids who have different needs. It's very difficult sometimes to understand them, to keep trying to understand them when sometimes their behavior seems very alien to us. But it's very much worth it. And I am impressed by each one of you who comments or who writes me an email. And I'm so glad to be in this community of people who are all working together to make the lives of these kids and their families and people in general better. We can do that with love and compassion. I will see you soon in my next video. Have a great day. Bye.